The Progressive Era took place through the years 1890 to 1920. During this period of time, there were many widely discussed issues such as women's suffrage, working conditions, and civil rights. Among these topics was the issue of environment and conservation.
During the Progressive Era, natural resources were heavily exploited, especially in the West. Land speculators and developers took over large tracts of forest and grazing land. Mining companies practiced improper and wasteful mining practices that were very bad for the environment around them, also using up a lot of natural resources.
Alarmed by the exploitation of natural resources by the public, conservationists called for federal supervision of the nation's resources. President Roosevelt was a man in office during this time and he was willing to correct these issues. Roosevelt accomplished a lot in what was known as the Roosevelt Era.
Under Theodore Roosevelt and his administration, the Newlands Act was passed in 1902. The act at first covered only 13 of the western states, as Texas had no federal lands. The act set aside money from sales of public lands for the construction and maintenance of irrigation projects. The newly irrigated land would be sold and money would be put into a fund that supported more projects like this. Soon, every major western river was dammed.
The Newlands Reclamation Act, also known as the U.S. Reclamation Act, authorized the federal government to commission water division and transmission projects in lands, particularly in the far west. Roosevelt believed that the land should be usable and settled by farming families and that the water in western rivers, if not being used to help people, was wasted. The Reclamation Act irrigated the West through a series of dams on waterways and is considered second in significance only to the Homestead Act of 1862. While the Homestead Act allowed farmers to claim land for agriculture, the Reclamation Act allowed them to access irrigation. In many cases, this irrigation was the only thing that made cultivating the land possible.
The Inland Waterways Commission, created by Congress in March of 1907 at the request of Theodore Roosevelt to look at the transportation crisis that had recently affected the nation's ability to move its produce. The immediate crisis centered on insufficient railroad capacity. The president wanted water projects to be considered for their multiple uses and in relation to other natural resources, and asked for a plan to improve the control of the river systems of the United States. While the nation's rivers are a great natural resource, they can also be destructive, endangering both life and property. On June 8, 1908, the National Conservation Commission was founded by Theodore Roosevelt. The purpose of this was to create an inventory of all species of life found in America. The commission was divided into 4 sections: water, forest, lands, and minerals, with each having its own chairman. It prepared the first inventory of the nation's natural resources in a 3-volume report submitted to Congress at the beginning of 1909. Roosevelt wanted the commission to continue, but Congress refused further funding, thus ending the project.
The Newlands Act, Inland Waterways Commission, and Natural Conservation Commission were all set up in attempts to help the environment during the Progressive Era. They were all successful in their own right and helped contribute to better the environment's health. During the Progressive Era, methods were discovered and put into practice on saving and not wasting many essential natural resources. All of this is largely due to Theodore Roosevelt. His influence and leadership helped the environment and conservation during this time period, and his legacy is still an influence to present day.